see, India has a very high stakes in the deliberations which take place in COFI, because India is not only one of the biggest players as far as fisheries and aquaculture is concerned globally, but a very large number of livelihoods also depend upon fisheries and aquaculture activities. And unlike most of the other countries, the size of fisheries and aquaculture in totality is big, but the holdings of individual farmers and fish workers are very small. So per person effort and the results of that effort are very, very meager. So we have very high stake that the global deliberations move towards sustainable fisheries, especially for the small scale sector.
The instruments such as Code of Conduct for Responsible Fisheries, Port State Measures Agreement, Guidelines on Catch Documentation Schemes, Guidelines for Small Scale Fisheries will help in achieving the core ambitions of the 2030 Agenda for the benefit of all fish workers, their families and their communities. Mr. Chairman, various national and sub-national legislations are in place in India for management and protection of the coastal and marine environment. A national monitoring framework for sustainable development goals has been formulated for measurement and tracking the progress of nationally defined indicators under SDGs. The Indian government is developing a national dashboard in SDGs in association with the United Nations. Mr. Chairman, our National Policy on Marine Fisheries 2017 encompasses sustainable development, socio-economic upliftment of fisheries, intergenerational equity, gender justice, provision of food security and nutrition, and creation of wealth and prosperity in the sector. Our government's Blue Revolution initiative is based on 3 pillars of sustainability: environmental protection, economic well-being and social inclusion. Mr. Chair, India, Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka have set up joint working groups on fisheries for sharing of knowledge for securing sustainable fisheries. To conclude, Mr. Chairman, as SDGs are universal and interconnected, therefore they call for innovative approaches to combine policies, programs, partnerships and investments to achieve our common goals. It requires collaboration across sectors and disciplines, participatory problem solving, financing and SDG compliant investments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chairman, India is committed to Paris Climate Agreement, ensure food security for our growing population and at the same time take people out of poverty. Unfortunately, these goals are not complementary to each other in the short term. Fisheries and aquaculture in India are crucial activities, especially for our rural economy, livelihoods, food security and export earnings. The fisheries community in India is extremely poor and are marginalized. They have limited access to resources and information, have no means to monitor the impacts. They are extremely vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change and extreme weather events. Mr. Chairman, the possible impacts of climate change are manifold, including decline in productivity, change in species composition and their geographical distribution, outbreak of infectious diseases, loss of habitat, rising sea level and disasters, etc. Therefore, there is a strong case for global support. India appreciates and acknowledges that FAO is providing us a global platform and doing exemplary work in collating the knowledge from across the world.
Chairman, India, while is in broad agreement with the program of work which has been outlined for the next biennium, would just like to make a couple of suggestions. So I would urge FAO to have much greater focus on aquaculture and within aquaculture, freshwater aquaculture. There are a lot of duplication of efforts going on in the countries and field. There are hundreds of bodies directly related with fisheries management or indirectly related, and we find that a lot of duplication of efforts is going on, which doesn't result in optimum utilization of resources. And we often hear that sometimes the lack of financial resources is a big impediment in carrying out some of the works. So would like if FAO could build greater synergy with the various regional fisheries bodies, whether accredited with FAO or not accredited, that would in fact would result in a very rational and optimum utilization of the resources. Chair, we would also urge FAO for greater engagement with the national governments. In the good old days, we used to see a lot of field work being done by FAO and a lot of presence of FAO and its workers in the field. Now, while FAO's contribution and role as far as policies, formulation, guidance to the governments and advocacy is concerned, it's quite impressive. But some of the field work in terms of actual dissemination of technologies and capacity building is something which we feel could do with some greater visibility. Thank you, Chair.